Mount Etna has roared back to spectacular action after a few months of relatively quiet, sending up a 12-kilometer high volcanic ash cloud over eastern Sicily.
And there were no immediate reports of injuries or property damage on the inhabited towns, bringing the slopes of the volcano, which is popular with hikers, skiers, and other tourists. According to Italy's National Institute of Geophysics and Volcanology, by Monday afternoon, the lava flow from the crater had stopped. But earlier in the day, while the volcanic cloud was pouring out of Etna, the institute issued a warning for aircraft in the area. Etna has had scores of known eruptions in its history. In 1669, in what has been considered the volcano's worst known eruption, lava buried a swath of Catania, the largest city in the east on the island of Sicily, and devastated dozens of villages. Meanwhile, northern Europe was battered by the third major storm in 5 days with heavy rains, and we also see the high winds.
That's true, killing at least 2 more people, disrupting travel and prompting hundreds of flood alerts across the region, still recovering from last week's hurricane force winds. Heavy rains and high winds swept across Northern Ireland and northern England before moving on to France. England's Environment Agency issued more than 300 flood warnings and alerts, and train operators urge people not to travel. Footage from social media showing a barge flowing down the swollen River Aire in the city of Leeds and crashing through a platform over the waterway. At least 14 people have died across Europe during a week of wild weather that meteorologists say is being fueled by an unusually strong jet stream over the North Atlantic. The storms have left hundreds of thousands of people without power and triggered local flooding and evacuations as high winds ripped the roofs of buildings. The end of February 2020 marked the start of the deadly COVID-19 outbreak in Italy, and soon all restrictions will be ended on March 31st.
Meanwhile, in the UK, it plans to end restrictions this Thursday. In Rome, though measures to curb COVID-19 are slowly easing and face masks outdoors are not mandatory anymore, residents are still reluctant to abandon the precautions used over the last 2 years. Restaurants, bars, and museums are now getting more and more crowded as those who had the vaccine booster dose were recently exempted from quarantine. But even though 88.5% of people over the age of 12 have now been fully vaccinated, experts think that new variants could challenge the country's health system and the attention must not be lowered. Italy was the first Western country to be hit by the pandemic after the virus erupted in Wuhan, China in December 2019.
Meanwhile, the UK government will end all coronavirus restrictions in England starting Thursday. Addressing in Parliament, Prime Minister Boris Johnson says the country was moving from government restrictions to personal responsibility as part of a plan for treating COVID-19 like other transmissible illnesses such as the flu. It means the laws requiring self-isolation, including for people tested positive, will be removed. However, the guidance to stay at home would still remain. The free COVID testing will be ended on April 1st, while staff and students in education and childcare settings will not be asked to test twice weekly. However, Johnson also says pandemic is not over and there will be new variants, possibly worse than the Omicron.
In England, we will remove all remaining domestic restrictions in law. From this Thursday, it will no longer be law to self-isolate if you test positive, and so we will also end the provision of self-isolation support payments, although statutory sick pay can still be claimed for a further month. If you're a fully vaccinated close contact or under 18, you will no longer be asked to test daily for 7 days. And if you're a close contact who is not fully vaccinated, you will no longer be required to self-isolate.